Back with us, President Saakashvili, let me ask you this question. Vladimir Putin, according to House intelligence officials here in the United States, controls the Crimean Peninsula now tonight. What will the Ukraine do about it? You've been in Kiev all week. You've been with opposition leaders. Are they able to fight back? Are they going to resist?
Look, Ukraine is a very, very peaceful country. And these people were really trying to put the whole thing together. They really reached out to Russian speakers in Ukraine. And it's, and the east of Ukraine mostly joined this protest. So there was not even single pretext for Russians to try to do that. The whole thing is that they were trying to sell this story to the Westerners that we are there to protect minorities. By the way, exactly when I mentioned Sudetenland, one has to remember that that part of Czechoslovakia was inhabited by ethnic Germans, and Germany came in to so-called protect. Russia invaded my country to protect self-positions, Abkhazians, and they also suffered because they also had to leave the territory because there was ethnic cleansing involving also those ethnic groups. So Russia, when using brutal force, it's exactly always the dictators that do that claim to be there on a humanitarian mission. They always claim to be provoked, but this claim is not valid. Now, Ukrainians, I think they were trying to start, they just brought in new interim government. The whole thing was going very peaceful. I met with all the leaders for the last several days, had long conversations. They had a very peaceful intention just to do reforms, carry out democratic changes, open up Ukraine towards Europe. That's exactly the things Vladimir Putin cannot forgive them. He is going there because if Ukraine goes democratic, normal, European, like open society, then every Russian will ask Vladimir Putin why we cannot have it's the same Russia. He had the same problem with Georgia. Because Georgia was succeeding in his building a democratic society, he had to act on these false pretenses of protecting some of our people. So Ukraine, unlike Georgia, has considerable army. They have officers' corps. So they gave up nuclear weapons, but their officers are very good. And by the way, considerable chunk of officers in Russian army are ethnically Ukrainian. So it's not so clear how Russians can force those people to fight against their own homeland. So the point here is we are really going towards, that's the worst thing to get to the situation where we might get real war between two big European countries like Russia and Ukraine. And by the way, Crimea also is a very important part for the rest of Europe. So, and then when we talk what the Americans can do, look, very short. You don't. Even if you don't send tanks, whatever the treaty obligations are, but you can certainly expel Russia from G8. You can certainly send tax inspectors to American banks and international banks where all the Putin's generals and all his corrupt officials around him, including himself. Putin is the most corrupt guy in the world. He controls the biggest amount of cash that anybody had ever controlled. It can all be seized. It's doable. Yanukovych felt the very moment when European Union announced sanctions and his people started to defect him. So don't send tanks at first stage, but at least send tax inspectors to Vladimir Putin's banks accounts and basically expel him to from G8 for God's sake, and other sanctions should be added because I heard President saying it will cost him. I've heard this said by also previous administration after Georgia's invasion. Well, did it really cost him? If it had cost him, he wouldn't have done now Ukraine. He is on a rampage, knowing exactly or thinking that he can act without impunity, with impunity.
Colonel Leighton, to what President Saakashvili just said, that there were no repercussions the other time Vladimir Putin did this, I wanted to play with the former chief of the CIA, General Hayden, just said to me. Here is General Hayden.
He's gone into Georgia in August of 2008. He took South Ossetia. He took Abkhazia. He still has them. And importantly here, Aaron, he really wasn't punished for that. That took place in August of 2008. By January of 2009, we have a new president. And there is no time in the penalty box for Putin with the new president. It's all about reset.
Right, reset, be friends.
Yeah, and so he got to do that and really didn't suffer too many adverse consequences.
Colonel Leighton, is that what is the problem right now? Is the world now suffering from the fact that Vladimir Putin invaded Georgia and South Ossetia and had no consequences?
Absolutely, Aaron, and really the historical analogy can be brought back even further than the Sudetenland in Czechoslovakia. It can go all the way back to the Rhineland when Hitler invaded the Rhineland in 1936. Same exact things happened, and because there were no consequences for Hitler, the rest is basically, as I say, history. World War II started the way it did, and it became a real imbroglio for all of the Western world. And this could happen again in the Ukraine. I hope it doesn't. But we have a real situation where the Russians are going to look at the excuse of protecting their ethnic minority, their kindred spirits in the Ukraine, in the Crimea especially, and in the eastern part of the country. And that is where they're going to use that excuse, and they're going to try to kowtow, have the Ukrainians kowtow to them when it comes to this kind of a political situation. And it's a very dangerous situation right now.
General Marks, will this become a war? Will that become an appropriate word to use?
I don't think it'll become a war. What we're really seeing is Putin really doesn't care at all what we say or what the international community says. He's very, very much in tune to what we do, what we demonstrate, and there are a number of things, as we've discussed, economic, financial, and diplomatic, that should be the precursors before any type of military action. However, simultaneously, the United States should be in the United Nations, in NATO, and galvanizing an international body that is prepared to take action to isolate and to try to narrow this challenge that we have. But we have to paint it the way it is, which is an invasion of one foreign country into another. Now, the Russians have a really strong case for the Crimea because they have an agreement with the Ukraine. That's where their Black Sea fleet is located.
Right.
Sevastopol is the only warm water port that Russia has. Every other port in Russia